okay? Talking about the geopolitical risk matrix. This is something we've developed for you to understand practically how to apply geopolitics each and every one of your businesses, or policymaking, as a fact. Would it be surprising to you to say that geopolitics has different speeds to it, right? Different speeds. So you have things on this continuum which happen at different times. We have FX risk, which is very, very fast, sanctions, which happen a bit slower than that, trade deals, which take longer to agree, wars, and also global governance. But at the same time, what we also have is the impact of geopolitical risk is also on a continuum, right? So we have fast and slow, but we also have global and bilateral. Global and bilateral in terms of its impact. So everything that we experience in business can be plotted on this graph, right? And I can guarantee that the majority of businesses in this room and also in the world tend to focus on the days and weeks, maybe months when it comes time to planning for your futures. Planning, your future development plans, growth strategies, etc. But let's see what it really looks like in terms of the impacts. We have global, regional, and blocks, right? EU, BRICS, and other things which have emerged, and also bilateral impacts. So the same points we brought up before, let's plot them on this new graph to show how they've evolved and how they've changed, right? We have, for example, global governance, which is probably the least focused on for businesses because it happens very, very slowly, over decades, right? And it's also very global. So that's not right in your purview. But how Lithuania is acting within institutions of the EU, the UN, etc., how much effort they're placing in the different bodies, what they want to achieve in these bodies, is important for businesses to focus on, right? Sanctions. Sanctions, as you can see, some last decades, like the US sanctions on Cuba, which have lasted 63 years. 63 years. Or you have some sanctions which go on for months. The shortest sanctions, I think the UK placed on an African country a long time ago, they lasted 36 minutes. 36 minutes. But the degree of sanctions and how long they stay on a business is important. Again, they're global to the regional level, which is easier for you to understand as businesses because all you need to do is not do business with them, right? So that, I suppose, is easier and within your line of scope, right? Line of sight. Then we have trade deals. Trade deals are much, much larger, much more complex, which take between weeks to years to agree, right? Some are bilateral, some are blocks, like we have with the EU and other blocks, and some are global, WTO, the GATT in the past, which turned into the WTO. So these things take time to agree and take moments to disintegrate, as we see with the US, for example. We also have wars, which impact businesses heavily in very obvious ways and also have secondary and tertiary impacts to you, to your clients, to your workforce, to many different areas. Again, some of these things are bilateral wars, some are block wars, some are global wars, which Europe has experienced all too well in our memories. And then FX risk, for those of you who care about these things, it's something which moves fast, although we do have pegs which try to limit the amount of volatility, but currency fluctuations can impact, especially if you're an exporter or importer, especially if you work in part of the economy which relies on stable pairings, right? FX volatility is a killer sometimes. So you need to keep a mind out for these things. So breaking it down like this is very important so you can see how things evolve and where your minds are. But what do you notice also? You notice that the biggest overlap of the geopolitical spectrum is between months and years where the biggest volatility happens. And also it's between blocks and also the global landscape. So if your mind is thinking in days and weeks and only think about how Lithuania is impacted by the rules or by the agreements we make with Poland, you're missing the biggest part. So you need to stretch your thinking to encapsulate your plans over the months and years. That's another way to build resilience, by doing this, by putting in the structures, putting in the teams that can do this. But this generally means a few things. First of all, risk is emerging at the same time all the time, right? But this also means something else. Your eyes need to be everywhere, but importantly, with different levels of focus. Because you can't focus on everything at the same time, it's impossible. And no one's expecting you to do this, but you must build an understanding of the tempo of international relations. You need to look at things from globalization, from global governance all the way to FX and everything in between, to find out where should we put our focus, how are our clients been impacted, how are their clients been impacted, right? Build models, build scenarios in your teams so that you at least have an idea of what to do